The NFL's next biggest event is coming up, the NFL Draft. Really important for so many teams, especially this year. And when two, not just one, two quarterbacks are at the top of the draft board, it makes things very exciting. We're joined by Taylor Jones, NFL analyst. We had him on for the playoffs. Fantastic breakdowns, and we're excited to have you back on for the NFL Draft segments here on TYT Sports. Taylor, why are so many NFL players talking about not attending the NFL Draft this year?
You know, this really isn't that much of a new phenomenon. We saw Joe Thomas actually go fishing on his draft day, and he went third overall. He didn't even watch the draft. And then we've got Tim Tebow, perhaps the most polarizing draft choice in the past decade, decided not to attend because he wanted to stay home with family. I think this is just a personal choice that we shouldn't really read much into. I think the league has made a conscious effort to try and avoid the humiliation video of showing the green room as people slide down the board. And quite frankly, I'm not so sure Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota really have to worry about that, because I think they'll be both top 5 picks, if not number 1 and number 2. Some have actually intimated that Jameis Winston has made this a conscious decision as to somewhat subtly show to teams that he's not all that interested in the limelight. He can lay back and therefore doesn't need to be in the big hubbub of the draft. I'm not so sure I buy that. I think that he just wants to be at home with family. I know nothing of his circumstances or situation, but at this point I wouldn't read too much into who's attending the draft and who's not.
Justin, we'll open up to you too. Now, there is a lot of talk about Jameis and a lot of talk about Marcus. Of course, one of them has to go first overall. Who do you think is going to go first? And then I want to ask Taylor Jones who he thinks is going first.
I think Jameis Winston is going to go first overall. I think he's the more mobile and versatile quarterback of the two of them. Obviously, it's the character thing that comes into play. You're not really sure if he's going to be a guy that you can rely on. We've had in the past, Johnny Manziel's had a really tough off-the-field issues that affected his on-the-field play. But yeah, I think he's a phenomenal player, and there's really nobody that stands out like him.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there's a lot of, fundamentally, it seems, Taylor, please fill in when you can. Fundamentally, it seems like he is 5-star across the board. But of course, the professional off the field, not so much. We obviously had his problems at Florida State, stealing crab legs, and amongst millions of other things, the sexual assault.
Have you had crab legs down in Florida?
Are they good?
They're amazing.
So it's okay.
It's worth
amazing.
It's worth it?
I would pay for it, but they're still pretty darn good. It's not excusable.
Well, it
but
still brings up my
understandable.
favorite tweet of all time when they had the Ask Jameis campaign. And it was, what's tougher to beat, like Florida defenses or Publix, which is the supermarket security guards. But Taylor Jones, in terms of course, his play and how that translates to the NFL level, what is it about Jameis that makes him go number 1?
Well, I agree with what a lot was said earlier. And I will tell you that for my money, he's by far the better quarterback of the two. If I'm in Tampa Bay's position, I'm turning the card in before the clock even is turned on. But I'm saying that with the understanding that my scouting team has already done the homework, and we understand that the off-field issues are put to bed, period. Which I think they are. The crab leg stuff, that's immaturity. We were all 20, 19, 18 in college and doing stupid things. The sexual assault thing, I'm not educated on. I'm not even going to begin to try to speak on that. But if my security team and my scouting department says, hey, we went to it, it's good, it's in the past, then I'm turning the card in. I think he's the best quarterback in the class, period.
You know, another thing that I'll say is the NFL is looking for quarterbacks that win games, and Jameis Winston has proven that he's a winner.
He can step up to the big stage. Of course, and someone like Tampa Bay drafting Jameis Winston, they still have a Vincent Jackson there. It's not like he's going to a team with no downfield threats. Now,
the other thing is you have, he's not local, but he's as close to local as you can get. So you have a built-in fan base at Florida State, a lot of those alums living in the Tampa Bay area. The proximity of those two teams make him almost a local hero.
Right.
And I think that, on top of his undeniable talent and the fact that he's won, how do you not take this guy with the number 1 pick?
It seems like he is the go-to.
I will tell you, him being local can be a good thing and a bad thing. When we're talking about a guy with off-the-field issues, maybe getting away from home isn't the worst thing. But we brought up Johnny Manziel's name earlier. I'm not ready to compare the two. Manziel is on a different level as far as my concerns off the field. Winston's a gym rat. I know that he's going to be on the field leading the guys. I know he's going to be in the film. This guy's going to work hard at the craft. It's just that, is he going to get in trouble when he's not at the practice facility? That's what I'm worried about.
Right. So, Tracy, I want to transition some of this NFL draft talk away from the quarterbacks and into one specific wide receiver who could have the biggest impact on the field this year as a first-year player.
I would say Amari Cooper. I'm really excited to see him on the field. I think game one, he's going to go out there and be good. I think we're looking at another Odell Beckham Jr.
Which, as a New York Giants fan, I'm a huge fan of Odell Beckham Jr. And in terms of the running backs, too, it's a stacked draft class. Now, again, the quarterback position, that's going to be the storylines. Of course, Jameis and Marcus, but there's other quarterbacks in the draft. And, of course, when we go over to the running backs as well, between Todd Gurley, I'm opening this up to anybody, so feel free to jump in. It's a free-for-all. You have Todd Gurley, who's coming off the ACL injury, but has a ton of talent. There's no doubt about it. Melvin Gordon, who ran all up and down the field all season long. And, of course, Amir Abdullah. And I'm probably missing 4 or 5 of them. So when it comes to the running backs, let's just go right around real quick. We'll start with David and go all the way around to Taylor, all the way in Ohio. Who do you got as your favorite running back coming out of this draft?
I'm not in there looking at the medical reports, but if Gurley is healthy and he checks out, and the report that came out recently was that he looks good, I think if you have a need at that position and running back something you want to fill and you think there's value wherever you happen to be drafting, I think you take Gurley. I think the guy, his speed and power is undeniable, and the guy would have been undeniably the #1 pick among running backs had he stayed healthy, and I think he can get back there. I mean, surgeries are pretty good. These guys are recovering at a pretty strong rate.
Right, Justin?
I would say Todd Gurley would probably be my top pick too, but I'm going to have to go with the homer pick and say Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon, while you might think that his stats were a little padded last year, Wisconsin's line is always full of 6'6", 350-pound guys from the homeland, but. He ran on some really good teams. He's a really big guy. He's probably the biggest running back coming out of Wisconsin in a few years, and I think he's built for the NFL. I really do.
Tracy?
And I'm very into Amir Abdullah. I think partly because I think this is a draft class with a lot of questions about off-field issues. There have been a lot of players with problems, and this guy is known as being a good guy in the locker room and a good guy off the field, and he is such a good worker, and he's a great running back, so I'm really into Abdullah.
The problem is, running backs are a lot like quarterbacks. It's hard to evaluate whether or not one player is better than another because so much of it depends on the system. So depending on which system these guys go, if they have a system that fits the needs and the skills of these players and they have a line that will support them, they might be very successful. So it's really hard. There is no, this is not an experiment where you have a set over here that you can compare to another set. It's a one-time situation, and we look back and say it was successful, but it's all dependent on how that person fits with the team they've got.
Right. There's coaches' systems that really do work for certain players, and obviously coaches' systems that don't work for any other player. That's a great example.
And also, two back offenses is so popular these days in the NFL.
It seems like if you can't work out of the backfield, you need those dual threat running backs, and especially in today's offenses. Now, Taylor, we know that the first round is stacked. Who's one of the deeper picks that we're going to see, hopefully maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th round, that you're very much looking forward to see make a difference on the field this year?
Well, from a running back position, I mean, we talked about it. All 3 of those guys you mentioned, I think, were 1st or 2nd round, at least off the board by day 2's completion. A guy who I would take later in the round and probably bypass the earlier guys for, because I think he could have a similar impact, is Duke Johnson out of Miami. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. You can keep him on the field on 3rd down and protect your quarterback. He can hit the hole. And that's really what you're asking your running back to do. Hey, we're going to carve out this hole from it. You hit it, get us 3 or 4 yards, and we'll line up and play again. And maybe we'll hit a big one and we'll score a 60-yard touchdown.
Taylor, moving the draft out of New York to Chicago, another major market, what kind of effect is that going to have?
This will be the first time in the past 50 years that the draft has not been held in New York City. Not all that time has been at Radio City Music Hall. But moving to Chicago, I don't think actually impacts much of anyone other than the media covering the event or attending the event. I do think there's something to be said about the prospects lining up across the big Radio City marquee and the fact that shot won't be there for their memory. But this has very little to do with football, this move to Chicago. They put it out to bid. Chicago won the bid. It's all about money. And quite frankly, why wouldn't it be? The NFL is going to outdraw the NBA, the NHL, and Major League Baseball in primetime television. And essentially all they're doing is creating a list of 32 names on Thursday, and then another 64 names on Friday. I will tell you, though, attending the event is something special. It should be on every football fan's bucket list. You walk in the venue, and I assume it'll be this way in Chicago as well. It reeks of money, of business deals, of agents, of entourages, and it's just something really cool to see. And the budding of these guys is potentially superstar careers. So the move to Chicago, business decision, not so much about football.
Taylor, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you back on TYT Sports and the post games. The Rundown, Tracy, Justin, David, and Jason. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave all your thoughts and comments in the comments section below, and we'll see you next time.